What is something that really freaks you out on an existential level? What percentage of my life do I even remember? My childhood is a dim memory, but so are many average days of my adult life. Keep a diary. Even a few notations in a day planner can bring back a wealth of memories, even of the vaguest days. When I'm traveling by plane in a different country and I'm looking down to the ground and see cars, buses and everything driving around on the countryside or a city, and I think to myself, down there is people living life exactly like I do and doing their everyday thing. Makes me think how big the world actually is and how tiny you are as a person. That freaks me out a bit. What did the part of a city I live in look like 1,000 years ago? How will it look 1,000 years in the future? 10,000? 100,000 years? How much of what's here now will survive? That the tiniest, most inconsequential decision can completely change the entire course of your life. Nearly 20 years ago, I needed some new shoes for work. As a poor student, I got the cheapest pair I could find. 2 days later, I was supposed to be going straight from work to a club with my friends when, halfway through my shift, the sole half ripped off one of the shoes. I didn't have enough time to get home, change my shoes, and get back to work before everyone left for the club. So I just went home and gave it a miss. That night, I started chatting with someone on a forum. A year later, went to visit them in America. 2 years later, I moved to America and we got married. 10 years after that, we both moved back to the UK. Had I chosen a different pair of shoes, I'd never met my wife, never moved to America, and my life would be completely different now. Because shoes. Guess you could say she's your soulmate. If it was easier to give gold on mobile, you'd have it, my friend. I think you accidentally gave gold to yourself instead. God damn it. I got you, bro. I hate it when that happens. I probably won't be remembered. On a long enough scale, none of us will. Chimpanzees. I have never really been able to articulate this as well as I would like, but the existence of chimpanzees is deeply disturbing to me in a very indescribable fashion. They are basically us except for a few very minor and completely random mutations that made us slightly better at analyzing patterns and communicating with each other. Whenever I see a chimpanzee, I'm really confronted with the fact that we humans are just another animal species, mostly controlled by instinct and making our decisions based on an incredibly biased framework of sensory perception and mental processing that was developed to survive a hunter-gatherer lifestyle on the African savanna. Did you know that to show submission to the leader of their pack, chimpanzees will come before him and bow to show their respect? That blew my mind, because humans have been bowing to their leaders since we had leaders, and we can invent all kinds of justifications for it. He's descended from the gods. He led our armies to victory over the foreign barbarians. I agree with his views on tax policy, but at the end of the day we are just apes bowing before another ape who groomed us well enough to become the pack leader. That is so fucking disturbing to me, I can't even describe it. I work at a zoo and the only animal that kinda creeps me out are the chimps. I remember I spent about 30 minutes straight just watching them and how they behave. It's very human-like in a lot of ways. I remember it was raining, and the baby chimp was sticking out his tongue and catching raindrops. That was something I did as a child too. It was mind-blowing in a small way. How you can trace the whole path of your life to some small, seemingly inconsequential event. Decades ago, when I was new to this area, I met a guy on the golf course and we became friends. I met others through him, and now 90% of my friends and contacts can be traced back to that meeting. If I had not golfed that day, or got one extra red light on the way to the course, would I have a whole separate set of friends now? Great one. I needed 3 C's to go to a university in London. I was ill for my exams, and complacent, and got C, D, so went to the University of Manchester. My children literally wouldn't exist if I had studied a bit harder at computer science. That whatever I did in the past are now just memories. Even yesterday, even though sometimes it feels like my childhood just happened, it was 20 years ago and they are memories. Did those actions even happen? It's hard to explain the feeling. How much quicker time goes by as you get older. Remember when you were 5, and a summer vacation felt like a whole lifetime? I just wanna be a kid again. Life is like a roll of toilet paper. The closer you get to the end, the faster it goes. Damn, this is real shit. Everything is disintegrating. Nothing is immortal. The television remote on the coffee table will not be a television remote in enough time. even if that means thousands of years have to pass before it loses its intended form. That's entropy, jazz hands. The fact that I will never know how things turn out, what becomes of the world once I'm gone. I only understand life as the version I've lived. I never get to know the future. Unless you get born into another consciousness into the future. But unfortunately you won't remember your past life to appreciate this fact. How we could die at any second. Today, tomorrow, in a week, in the next 5 minutes. And nobody can stop it. Death is one of the true guarantees of life. I'm not sure what's worse, knowing you're dying, or dying without knowing it. It takes a, admittedly microscopic, amount of time for your brain to process every stimulus that you receive. This means that you are never perceiving reality in real time. There's the slightest delay between reality and your perception of it. What's worse is that your brain lies to you and tries to trick you about it. Find a clock with a second hand. Look away. Now look right at it. See, the second hand takes just a little longer to move that first second than all the other seconds that come after. That's because your first glimpse of the hand moving is blurry. So your brain waits for it to be in focus, copies that frame, and pastes it backwards instead of the blur. Your brain literally pauses time to make things look how you'd expect it to look. If it's lying about that, what else is it lying about? If we let our brains get too smart, they will start taking over our bodies. I was in the shower the other night and I lifted up my leg, and I wondered, how do I know how to lift up my leg? This shit always fucked me up as a kid. Like, how can I move my body parts? Okay, so most adults have at least some concept of the vastness of the universe. Each of us contains an almost unbelievable wealth of knowledge in our brains. They are essentially a universe unto themselves. Yet we can come into contact with another person and, in a matter of seconds, boil their entire existence down to, well, he's an asshole. But he is. He fucking merged without his blinker. Every so often I'll see myself in a mirror, and I'm reminded that I'm a conscious person able to influence the world around me. Sometimes I get so hung up on the daily routines and the little challenges here and there, that I forget that I'm a mind connected to a physical body. It's fucking surreal for a few seconds, but then I realize that it's always been like this. I feel this way when I'm out in public sometimes, suddenly realizing I'm actually physically real and interacting with the world. Everyone around can see me. For some reason this trips me the fuck out. To think that other people can observe my physical existence. I forget that I'm not in my own world sometimes. That every public institution, every province of government, every law of any nation, it all works because a sufficiently high percentage of people silently assent that it does. It doesn't matter what type of government is in place. If 70% of the population woke up tomorrow and decided that currency has no value and governance is unnecessary, that's exactly what would happen. Dude, I think about this all the time. I like to study a lot of constitutional law, and man, it doesn't ever give me a final answer that makes me comfortable. Plot twist. He's an American who's over 200 years old. This thread, thanks for the multi-tiered existential crisis at work. Knowledge lost. Societies that existed millennia before ours had incredibly complex social structures, massive infrastructure, built incredible wonders, understood boggling amounts of modern math, and did it all in harsher conditions with less technology. So clearly they were smart and capable. At least some. Imagine all the great knowledge that they had which we lost. All the theorems or observations they made in societies that lasted 10 times as long as many of today's, which disappeared in war or accident. Knowledge defines man. We are a species of filers who wish to make pattern and sense out of chaos. Yet knowledge is so very fragile. It messes me up that people 1,000 years ago were just as capable to learn what we are now. A kid from early Rome could go to school in 2018 and be just as smart as everyone else. Every time we step outside of our houses could be the time we never come back. At any moment, some freak accident could happen and kill any one of us. Our lives are just an endless stream of consciousness, worrying about our own problems, worrying about this, worrying about that. But it could all come to a screeching halt in a split second, and we'd be gone from the world in an instant. I'm a biker. I think about this every single time I straddle that seat, every time I put on that helmet. This could be my last ride. That's the risk I take with the hobby that I love. I have a paramedic friend who once told me that, one day, you're going to put our shoes on and someone else will have to take them off. I think about death every time I put shoes on now. I'm never wearing shoes again. Checkmate. Death. One day you're gonna step out barefoot and have shoes put on you. Fuck. Now I can't wear shoes or go barefoot. Off with your feet. I always realize the enormity of the universe when checking my mailbox. Walk down my driveway, mostly zoning out. My mailbox is across the street in the neighbor's front yard for some fucking reason. So I fart across the street, and it's always then that I look up and see the moon or the stars and just feel hilariously ridiculous. I too occasionally fart across the street. I don't recall what made me think it, but randomly dawned on me a few years ago. Every asshole that cuts you off in traffic, everyone you see eating at a restaurant, every last person you see has a life they're living just like yourself. They go through trials and tribulations just like you. On top of that, there are billions of people you'll never see, and they're the same way regardless of you knowing of their existence. When I realized that, it legitimately freaked me out that I went my whole life without realizing that. Thinking they're like a background actor in my life just made me feel so insignificant and made me question whether me being here or not really even mattered. I still think that occasionally 10 plus years after that realization. I think that that's actually made me a more considerate person for the most part. I try to think about that when people cut me off and do stupid stuff, but I'm sure some people are just assholes. Looking at the old photos of my ancestors that my great uncle left me, I have no idea who any of the people in them are, but a lot of them look kinda like me, or vice versa really. It's fucking weird thinking about all the people who've lived and died and left really no legacy at all. Forgotten. And knowing I'll be forgotten too. Probably less than even 50 years after I die. It's sobering and makes me realize there is really no use trying to live a life I don't enjoy. If I don't like my job I should quit. If I want to live somewhere else, I should just go there. Tomorrow is guaranteed to no one. Upside they likely had embarrassing moments that kept them up at night, but you have no idea what it was. Your embarrassment will also be lost to time. This is a comforting thought. Chaos. The thought that the universe just gets more and more disorganized freaks me out ever since I learned about it in school, so I just pretend it doesn't exist. No matter what you're doing in life, you could probably have made a decision that would make you happier right now. This makes me happy because then my argumentative brain goes, yeah well I could have made a decision that completely fucked up my life and made me wholly miserable too. Then I'm grateful for all the good stuff in life. What caused the Big Bang if nothing existed? Or has something always existed? And if it has, where did that come from? I can recommend watching a lecture by Lawrence Krauss called Why There Is Something Rather Than Nothing. Pretty cool and interesting, even though it's hard to grasp. That no matter how much you get to know someone, no matter how much you share your life, learn about them, feel as though you are almost the same person, there will always be an infinite gulf between who you think they are and who they really are. You cannot know someone else. You can only know your perception of them. Your experience of that person flows through the filter of your personality, your experiences and memories, your biases and intuitions. You don't know them. You know your conception of them. Subjectivity of experience makes truly knowing another person completely impossible. We are all perfectly isolated souls, completely separate from everyone else, desperately reaching out to convince ourselves we aren't really alone. You're some deep motherfuckers in this thread. Whenever I look into a mirror for too long I start to get freaked out that I'm looking at myself, and myself is looking back at me. Then I start to think about how my brain is witnessing itself in an infinite loop. Then I get freaked out and go about my day. My funeral will probably be attended by less than 10 people. Fewer than 10 people. You're absolutely correct. I feel like a complete chump. I'm leaving my terrible grammar above for all to see. I'm shamed. All 10 of us. I have no interest in having kids. That means that I'm the final result of thousands and thousands and thousands of years of evolution and successful reproduction. That it's a strong possibility I'll be alone with no family by the time I die. All my friends are married and having kids, and I'm just here like whelp. Maybe I'll try dating again. People say life isn't a race, but if you aren't at the same pace as everyone else, when they leave you behind for their own lives, then it's not really a race anymore, is it? You just kind of hobble for a decade then cry at intersections when a red light takes too long. Cry at intersections when a red light takes too long. Ah fuck to real.